All right, it is a Monday morning, folks. Pretty quiet out there when it comes to traffic, that's for sure. A lot of people on vacation right now, and there's a lull in the city, but there's not a lull at City Hall, that's for sure, as the debate over active transportation and strong mayor powers heat up, and lots of controversy to get to. In just a couple of minutes, I'll chat with, I'll introduce my councillors, one in which is in the midst of the center of all of this, a controversy. So we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on these same issues, and it's surrounding strong mayor powers. That is the topic du jour, if you will. And Halifax City Council has directed the mayor to ask the Nova Scotia government for a consultation on whether it is considering strengthening his authority. So some of the questions that I'll ask you to weigh in on when we open the phone lines, and you can certainly get to it with our councillors as well, is do you support strong mayor powers legislation, or do you oppose it? And do you believe that it would undermine democracy in HRM or improve it? And why are some members of council opposing it? Do you believe it's about protecting democracy, or is it about losing influence over HRM policies? And should the premier of this province, who has been very, very critical of this council, be so involved and so vocal when it comes to decisions of council, reference bike lanes or strong mayor powers? Or should he stay in his own lane, pun intended? So those are some of the questions that I'm asking you to weigh in on. And you can get into other things. I have some other things that caught my eye this morning as well that we can get into. But again, we will open the phone lines in about an hour's time, and we'll hear what you have to say. I'd like to thank Veinotte Vandeness as well, on the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job as always. And thanks to Dan Alstrand, who sat in for me on Friday while I was away, and I appreciate it. Did a great job as always, and thanks to Dan for that. All right, let's get into this. Joining me here in studio, Sam Austin, District 5, Dartmouth Centre. Sam Austin, welcome to the show.
Morning.
And Virginia Hinch, District 8, Halifax Peninsula North. And we sit in her district. Virginia, hello.
Hello, welcome.
Yes.
Hello.
Welcoming me to my show. I appreciate that.
I do, yeah.
Virginia, anything you want to pass along to listeners and constituents before we dive into this thing?
Let me see. The one thing that I've been hearing complaints about is the organic recycling, what's going on with that. And I know that it's, we paused it a bit, and I know that it's coming back on the 21st of July. And it's going to be for at least straight every week until September, I believe it is. So, yeah, so 21st is coming around soon, and you won't have to hold your stinky garbage anymore.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. I mean, with the humidity and all that, it really is necessary.
It is definitely necessary.
Yeah, whatever the cost is, it's worth it for sure.
Yes.
Okay, Sam, what about you? Anything you want to pass along?
Oh, sorry, losing my voice there. Probably the two things going on in my district that, kind of haven't quite made it in news yet. Dartmouth North, the library, we are still, unfortunately, that facility up there, the community center library, is still out of commission from the sewer backup that happened in there and did some pretty catastrophic damage. So that's still going on. The library is hoping to have a temporary location up and running soon, so that will hopefully fill some of the need up there in the community. And then the other one I'll mention is just Little Albro Lake. When we treated the floating yellow heart last year, it did very well. We ended up with probably 97% of all the floating yellow heart died from the herbicide treatment, but not all of it. So staff are figuring out how we're going to come back and do some more touch-up work in Little Albro Lake this year. So those are probably the two major items in my district. Okay, fair enough. So if you'd like to chat with one or both the councillors, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to take part in this, folks. This is what it's about. It's about your opportunity to ask the councillors some questions, or to criticize, or to compliment, or comment in general. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. So Halifax City Council has directed the mayor to ask the government of Nova Scotia for consultation on whether it is considering strengthening his authority. Council voted last week in favor of the motion to make the request for collaboration in a letter to Municipal Affairs Minister John Lohr, with only Andy Fillmore voting against it.
Sam Austin, who you just heard from, presented the motion and told council that a move towards strong mayor powers would undermine council's ability to adequately represent their constituents. Sam, what are your fundamental concerns or issues with this?
Yeah, so fundamentally there's two. The first is, as you have pointed out, the representation piece. No one, not myself, not the mayor, not anyone on council, can adequately represent the whole diversity of perspectives, opinions that exist in our community. That's just, we're all humans and we're all limited in our own abilities. And so how do you get closer to that ideal? It's the collective, right? So collectively together, you have council and mayor come together from various communities, various perspectives, and that gets you closer to the ideal. So I think if you concentrate the power in the hands of one, you start to undermine that. And primarily the most marginalized of communities are the ones that end up feeling that hit the most. The other piece for me is just the impartiality of the civil service. We depend on getting good advice to make evidence-based decisions off of. Do you still get that good advice if the civil service is directly responsible to the mayor rather than council as a whole? If someone can hire or fire you, there's a pretty strong incentive to then make your advice fit what they want to hear rather than what the evidence on any decision is. And so I'm very concerned that if the mayor got the ability to hire and fire senior staff, that we would end up getting advice at council that just isn't very good anymore.
Okay. Virginia, what's your take on this?
So I'm glad that Sam brought this forward, and I just definitely agree with everything that he has said. I'm still learning all the processes and things, and strong mayor power is a new thing for me. So, you know what? I'm glad that he's here with me today. Mm-hmm. and literally, I believe that it's not a good thing. It's not a right thing. It's due to the fact that we were all elected to represent our communities. So, yeah, I'm glad that he brought it forward, and I do definitely agree with him 100%.
Oh, okay, all right. What, folks, listen, give us a call. We get some open lines for you, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. So in a story in the Chronicle Herald, during a debate over strong mayor powers at council meeting Thursday, Fillmore said the system they operate under was built for a smaller city in a simpler time, and urgent decisions on housing and other priorities are being delayed. He said strong mayor powers are the key to getting things done. Quote, if Halifax stalls, Nova Scotia slows, Fillmore said. This is not a call for unchecked authority. It's a call for accountable democratic leadership. He said it will be up to voters on election day to hold the mayor accountable. What's your response to that, Sam?
Well, I think, a couple of things, right? I mean, we have to remember that if this change comes in, this is a major and permanent institutional change, right? It's not just about, whether you agree with some of the things the mayor has put forward or you're opposed. This becomes something that is permanent. The example in Toronto being they brought in strong mayor powers and gave them to John Tory. I think it was just 2 years later, might not have even been the full 2 years. He ended up having to resign in disgrace, and then Olivia Chow ends up running and winning mayor. So you thought you were giving strong mayor powers to kind of a right-of-center guy, and it ended up being a left-of-center woman instead. So, it is not just about the individual that currently sits in the office, right? We have to think a little bit more broadly than that. In terms of the mayor's point about the municipality, now I'm going to do the opposite because he's generally been making it very much about him and in his commentary, is just what has been blocked. He got his way on the budget, right? Council passed the budget that he was seeking. Bike lanes, we are getting a bike lane review courtesy of Councillor Mancini's motion. He didn't get his way on pausing things, which was the main kind of stumbling point at council. On housing, we did the regional plan within the province's deadline, and to my recollection, there's nothing that the mayor's put forward that council has shot down on that. And then I guess the only other big vote has been around encampments, where the mayor didn't get his way on that one, mainly because council needed to be satisfied there was a place for people to go. Since then, we have closed the Gary Street encampment. So I would suggest, what is the goal of strong mayor powers? Is it that council just rubber stamps whatever the mayor has to say, right? I mean, I don't think that's the purpose of the body. And I don't think the measure of success should be that the mayor gets his way on every single issue all the time. This issue has to be bigger than just, well, do you like a bike lane on Morris Street or not? This is a major institutional change.
Okay, so when it comes to how much would he be able to override everything, or would it be just
that remains to be seen?
We don't know that, right?
No,
that would be embedded in the legislation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ways this could function in Ontario. Mayors have been given the ability to hire and fire the CAO and senior staff. They can pass bylaws with only a third support of their council, so council has to come together 2/3 to block the mayor, which to me turns council from a governing body into basically a weak check on the mayor rather than the decision makers. And then the last piece of it there is, we risk turning our system into from a place of evidence-based, merit-based kind of hiring and decision-making into a place where it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so if you're on the good side of the mayor as a staffer, if you can produce things that they want, then your career goes. If you're telling truth to power, well, not so much.
Okay, so this is why you want consultation, obviously, because you want to know what this legislation might look like.
Yes, exactly. So, and then there's the budget piece too. Like in Ontario, mayors are now responsible for bringing the budget rather than the budget being produced in a joint effort. So, I think a major change like this needs some consultation. And frankly, I think this goes to the heart of our kind of municipal governance, and I think the public should honestly have a say in that as well, not just the politicians.
Okay, what is your say, folks? Give us a call at 902-405-6000. James is giving us a call. Hello, James.
Hi. Very interesting topic. I'll try to be brief. Clearly, one would imagine there needs to be consultation, significant consultation on such a fundamental change to the way HRM is governed. So I would hope the council itself might be able to do some perhaps unofficial consultation, but the province, when they introduce the legislation at the fall session to enact this strong mayor quote unquote system. Oh, and I guess I think the minister committed to consulting with the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, so that's a good thing. He was kind of mumbling and bumbling, but I think he said that today. But then in the legislature, there's a chance, well, obviously the political parties get their say, but assuming the sitting government does not cancel law amendments committee, that's the chance for citizens to show up and say, no, this is not the way democracy should work in Nova Scotia. Our municipal system has been in place for a very long time. As like many people in Nova Scotia, I enjoy the opportunity to interact with my councillor and give my opinion and see then that person, he or she, will take it into account and life goes on. And we have great debates at HRM council meetings. You can watch them on YouTube and whatever. So I don't know. This just seems like too much, too fast.
Okay. Sam, what's your response to what you just heard?
Generally, I agree. I mean, I think this is something that we should slow down and think about carefully. The public should have a chance to have a say. And I've seen the suggestion, and actually I don't think it's a bad one either, that if you are going to make a major change like this, where it wasn't part of it, sorry, pardon me. It wasn't part of any provincial election campaign. It wasn't part of the mayoral campaign here. That this should become something that becomes effective at the next municipal election in 2028. Yeah, if you are going to make this change,
in particular with the provincial election, right?
Yeah, nobody campaigned on this, right? Yeah. This has purely been a backroom discussion thing that's been going on up until about this week.
Okay, fair enough. James, is that it for you?
Excellent point. I should have said that too. Great point. Nobody ran on this, and so this is out of nowhere, and that's not really the way. This is fundamental, and that's not really the way a democracy should work.
Okay, thanks, James. Appreciate it. Take care. Okay, folks, give us a call. We got open lines for you. What did you say on this? Or if you'd like to chat with one of the councillors or both, give us a call. If you'd like to talk with Strong Mayor Powers or bike lanes or other municipal issues, 902-405-6000. Again, we got open lines for you. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, it's councillors on the hot seat. Sam Austin, District 5, Virginia Hinch, District 8 here in studio. Give us a call, folks. We got open lines for you. Again, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Ken's giving us a buzz. Hello, Ken.
How you doing, Todd?
Doing well.
I got a question for Sam. Well, actually, two of them. Woodlawn Avenue and Slater Street. There's a cement piece there with one of them bike lane flags or whatever. Can you tell me why that's there?
So I think you're talking about those temporary curb extensions. So Slater Street is identified in the bike network as a local street bikeway. And so we're in the process now, reports coming back to council probably in August regarding what the permanent approach to Slater Street is going to be. In advance of that, we did some temporary stuff around intersections, some speed humps on the street. So the idea of that is to reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians and cyclists as they go across Slater and Woodland, and to make turning vehicles be more deliberate and slow in the turn that they're making, since that's a point of conflict. So that's the purpose of it. I know not everyone loves them.
It makes absolutely no sense to me. The thing has been there. They've been there for what now, 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
And serving no purpose whatsoever. And as far as the bike lanes go, twice now this morning you mentioned, we need input from constituents or and follow the direction and all that. Well, if less than 1% of the people want bike lanes in Dartmouth, like, what personally do you have going for it that you want to keep this going? And then the mayor says, well, let's do a review on cost. Oh, no, we don't care about cost. Let's keep these bike lanes coming. And please give me a different answer than if we build them, they will come, because that's BS, you know it. And there's nobody, like, I would love to see one of them, I'm not sure what they're called, the black things that go across the road to take a vehicle count. Why don't you put one of them on the bike lanes and see exactly how many bikes are going through? Because it's a waste of money. It should be under review. And as far as I'm concerned, as jumping from one to the next here with the mayor power net, if everything that's being tendered out goes from, let's say, the water commission vehicle or building, from what was that, 32 million to 97 million or 76 million or something like that. If that goes unchecked, then yes, maybe the mayor should have some powers to fire people, because right now you can do anything in Halifax and nobody's accountable for nothing. Nobody gets fired. Nobody gets disciplined. Nothing.
Okay, Sam, what's your response?
Sure, I'll see if I can remember all of them, because you threw out a bunch there. So first, mandate to do this. I've had completing the bike network in every single election platform that I've had out there. I've won each time. I consider myself that I have a mandate for this. HRM has done resident polling, and the results show that bike lanes are more contentious. We do have 33%, I think it was, in the resident survey that don't want bike lanes, but the rest either want us to continue the current program or expand it. So the idea that everyone is opposed to bike lanes is just verifiably not true. We do actually have counters out there that are measuring bike lane usage. We have 9 of them that are active. Unfortunately, we're missing one at the McDonald Bridge right now, but we have 9 counters, and I think it was last week, might have been the week before, the tally for the whole week in terms of bike ridership was 16,000 bike trips counted on those 9 counters. Well, I'm sorry that the mechanical counter under the pavement doesn't fit your worldview. That's it is just what it is. If you don't like the number, that's the number.
Well, it's Sam, and as far as the report goes, and I argue with Rick Howe on this when he was on the show, it all depends on who's paying for the report, which way the report goes. So that's here nor there, too.
What
you may as well
report?
throw that right out the window.
Which report are you referring to, Ken?
Well, you just said you did a customer survey or a survey
statistically,
or
it was something like
33%?
2,000 some odd people, met all the scientific rigor of random sampling in terms of demographics. That went out, and that's what came back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand we disagree on these points, but, I think all of us, myself included, we all have a challenge and it's become more and more hard in this world, the way things have been going. I think we all have to remember that, our particular opinions are not necessarily everybody else's opinions.
Where was this 16,000 count at, Sam?
9 counters spread throughout the city. I don't have my computer in front of me.
The bridge wasn't included.
The bridge isn't even included.
And
that would be one of the bigger ones. Yeah. So I think there's one down around South Park Street. There's one on the Dartmouth Harbor Trail, but I don't know off the top of my head what the other 7 are. But they're scattered throughout the peninsula.
Well, I could tell you anybody who's out there driving for a living would argue that point right to the death.
Well, I mean, the empirical Ken, in fairness, I mean, the counters don't lie. I mean, that's not an opinion. That's empirical data.
No, I'm not saying that the counters will lie, but who's to say whoever's collecting the data won't fudge the numbers?
Well,
just to keep this going.
Conspiracy theory at that point.
Well,
I did want to Ken's point about the cost piece. We actually do have a report. Councillor Mancini brought forward a motion that council then passed. The main difference between Councillor Mancini's motion and Mayor Fillmore's motion is Mayor Fillmore's motion, council wouldn't do it because it threw the current construction season into chaos by cancelling projects that were in flight. Councillor Mancini brought forward a motion at the next council meeting to look at cost, how we're going to do this program going forward. And so that passed council. So we are looking at that cost piece. Cost is a factor. It's something we're facing on all of our projects right now.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay, it's the joy
right.
that keeps on giving on cost.
Ken, thanks for the call, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Just quickly before we go to break, Sam, what's your take on Premier Houston being so vocal and critical of council?
Well, I mean, so Tuesday last week, we was right into the wee hours of the night there, like 11 a.m., for wee hours for council anyway. Yeah. We don't normally go past 10. So we were into extra innings to talk about the Moore Street bike lane. And, we'd not received anything officially from the province on this. There had been an inquiry on a staff level. Well, what actually is your project? And so it's quite a thing, like, to then have the Premier the very next day blasting our decision. If he had concerns, why wouldn't you just bring them forward to us rather than waiting for us to make a decision and then criticizing that decision the very next day so harshly? And I'd be surprised if he was very thoroughly briefed on the kind of pros, cons. It's not an easy thing. Like, there's no decision down there that's going to please everyone. So, I would just hope that the Premier and his government would adopt a more consultative approach to things. I think we make decisions better together rather than
Virginia,
blasting each other.
Do you think the Premier should be so vocal and opposing what council's doing?
So I saw the interview as well. I was not happy with the comments that the Premier has made. If we work together, I think we would do better as a city. So I believe the Premier should, have a conversation with council instead of just blatantly out there saying how disappointed he is. So
okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us to chat with our councillors. Give us a call. Again, 902-405-6000. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues when we come back. All right, we have our councillors here in studio and taking your calls as well. You got an open line for you. Also, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Sam Austin, Virginia Hinch here in studio. Again, 902-405-6000. Sam, this person asks about, before we go back to the phones, data and bike counters. You mentioned that there were 16,000 registered bikers. And this guy asks, would that be 8,000 as each bike would cross the counter twice, 2 wheels?
No, so they're not the same sort of counters as your vehicle. Even in your vehicle, I mean, if you're in your car and you drive over those black tubes, if you see them across the road, it's not counting your car twice, right? The technology is smart enough; it can determine that.
Okay, fair enough.
I did just dig out while we were on break there, just if folks are interested where the active counters actually are right now. We have one on Almond Street, one on the Colta Trail, the one on the Harbor Trail at Dartmouth Cove, one on Gottingen Street, one at Hollis, one at Lower Water, one at South Park, one at Vernon, and one at Windsor. And right now, the one on Barrington and the one at University Ave, those two are broken right now, so they're not recording. So the other 9 are up and running.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Hugh, hello.
Good day. How are you today?
I'm well, you?
Great. I got a question for Mr. Sam there. Is it all the taxpayers in HRM are paying for these bike lanes on the peninsula?
Yes. Pretty much the main revenue source that the city has is property tax, and we all pay for everything that we do through that.
Well, I think people out on the Eastern Shore that are never going to access those bicycle lanes shouldn't be paying for them. You want them on the peninsula? Tax the people on the peninsula for them. They're absolutely useless. 25 million to 100 million? Not right. Something don't smell right.
So I think one of the challenges you hit upon there is that line between, what is fair to ask people to pay for collectively and what should be paid for in area rate. My take is we all live in a society together and we all end up paying for things that we don't necessarily use. The new Eastern Shore Lifestyle Center that's underway out there in Sheet Harbor, no one in my district practically no one will ever use that facility, but, we still pay for that because it is the right thing to do for living in a society together.
No, it's not the right thing to do. All you're doing is making narrow streets narrower with bike lanes. It's just crazy. You got Moore Street now. You're going to screw that up. Then you're going to take and screw Water Street back up again. It'd be a nightmare to get out of there during rush hours. It's foolish what you guys are doing.
Okay,
There's
Hugh
no thought in it at all.
All right, Hugh, doesn't sound like we're going to get any further with this debate. But anyway, thanks for your voice. Thanks for your thoughts. 902-405-6000. Marilyn's giving us a call. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm just curious, why is there so much money being spent on it, and why can we not just go down the sidewalk, paint the yellow line down the middle of the sidewalk? One side is bikes, one side is people. Like, I get the importance of being safe on your bike, but why do you need the bikes on the road? Like, that's not safe. You're crowding out the roads. You're creating more dangers. Why can't we just put the bikes on the sidewalk, paint a yellow line down the middle? It's going to cost you very little, and everybody's going to be happy. It just makes zero sense. And also, the counters, they're large numbers, yes, but how many of those people were there before the bike lanes even began? Like, is it actually going to make a difference? Spending all this money.
Hey, Virginia, did you want to take a shot at responding to this?
Well, what I will say is that, we need to, pedestrians need to be safe. And I find even on the crosswalks, it's kind of challenging navigating with bikes as well.
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks. And I believe they need their own protective lanes. So, I believe we all need our own protective lanes. So pedestrians need the sidewalks, bikes need their space, and cars need their space as well. So I think we have enough. Hopefully, we can share it. If that makes any sense.
Hence the reason for a line down the middle of the sidewalk.
Well, I don't know if that line would really go well on the sidewalk.
But a bike against a car is deadly. A bike against a person walking is somebody with a few scrapes and bruises and millions of dollars cheaper. Just saying.
Hey, Sam, what's your response to that?
Yeah, so, the whole reason why we need to do protective bike lanes is because that's actually how we get the most out of the investment. People are free to bike on almost any street out there already. a lot of people don't, because they understandably look at that and say, that is not safe for me. And unfortunately, we've had losses of life over the years as people who have died, sharing space with cars. The thing that we all need is we need to have a transportation system that prioritizes everybody, especially people's safety. And, I think if you put bikes onto the sidewalks, you'd introduce a whole lot of potential conflict with pedestrians. You need to actually have a proper space for them.
Yeah, but again, like the sidewalks are huge, and putting bikes with people are way safer than putting bikes with cars. And when you start condensing the roads, you're going to cause way more issues. And again, we're not talking a couple of dollars difference. We're talking millions of dollars for a line down the middle. Years have gone on where people bike on the sidewalk, and now we put them on the road. Like, you wouldn't get me biking on the road. I'd have no problem biking down the sidewalk, and I can do it comfortably with people walking there as well.
So I think, the kind of choice you're setting up, we're actually choosing neither of those. There's an in-between choice of we do have, sometimes it means giving up parking, but we do have road space that can be repurposed without taking stuff away from drivers. And so that's really what the city's been doing. And, that's really been the direction.
Yeah, I don't see any communication there.
And when we do, there is a set standard for width of a space. Once we are asking pedestrians and cyclists to share, there are multi-use trails, and rather than concrete, they're done in asphalt, and they're much wider than sidewalks. So even if we just said, hey, well, let's just do multi-use trails, there'd be a whole bunch of sidewalks that we would then actually have to widen out to make that a safe, doable prospect. Mm-hmm. It is something we've done in some places, like I think about Coburg. In Dartmouth, the multi-use trail is very much part of the bedrock of getting people around off-road.
I believe on Baker Drive, there's sidewalks which have a line down the middle.
Yeah, so that would be the multi-use trail. And so those are wider than a sidewalk on the peninsula, which is much narrower and much more congested with pedestrians. And we are kind of grappling with, when is it that the multi-use trail option stops being an appropriate option because the volume of pedestrians and the volume of cyclists is too much for the two of them to share space? And we haven't really figured the answer out to that.
Okay,
Marilyn, appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello. Hi, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. My question's in regards to the 16,000 count of bicycles for Sam. That was over a 7-day period, was it, Sam?
Yes.
Okay. And what week of the year was that, or what month of the year was that conducted on?
It would have been just a few weeks ago. I have been reporting the monthly tallies on my own social media feed. I'm just scrolling through. It was 13,784 was the count for the week of Saturday, July 5th. You can go back and you can pick any kind of week you want.
Okay, so let's go back to January. Let's pick a week like January 10th to 17th.
It's about a quarter of the usage in the wintertime. It drops off quite considerably.
Exactly. So, holding 16,000 up as the weekly, it's kind of misleading, because you got to go on an annual basis, because taxpayers continue to pay money 12 months of the year. But we're not getting 16,000 users a week or 95 bikers an hour. We're getting probably 6,000 bikers on an average annually. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. People get suspicious and they don't believe what you have to say. You got another survey there. 66% of the people that you surveyed want bike lanes. Well, I haven't heard any of them on the show yet. I'm sure they're out there, but That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Tim, what's your response to that, Sam?
Well, I was just kind of scrolling back here to try and get down into some numbers for for back in the winter. Friday, March, this is a single day, had 1,000 people. Friday, March 28th, I haven't gotten all the way back there. It is less usage in the winter. When I have looked back on it, the two things that do stand out, the winter usage is growing in the same way that the summer usage is growing. So we will always have fewer people willing to ride in the winter. I'm frankly one of them. So in the winter time, I put my bike in the shed and I use transit much more than I would otherwise. And so when you look at the trend lines, I think that's the important thing to note on that, is that both winter and summer are seeing the same growth as we build out the infrastructure.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Brendan's a biker, I'm told. Brendan, go ahead.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. Go ahead.
Good. I figured I'd try and get a call, and I was just running some errands in my car, and now I'm about to hop on my bike and go to work downtown. I completely agree. Build it, and they will come. I ride my bike to work quite a bit in the summer, and I'd say quite frequently I'd ride it in the winter if I had infrastructure that meant I didn't need to deal with cars to get downtown. But we're extremely financially unviable right now, and the fact is the Corps is the economic generator for the city, and the Corps has said we want more bike lanes. We want options to get around that doesn't involve using your car. Like I said, I'm in my car right now because I had to go to Home Depot this morning, and I'm actually going home to get on my bike to bike downtown because it's easier to get downtown, parking is free, and it's better for you. And anyways, a lot of bikers and a lot of people out living their lives not in cars don't get a chance to call in on the radio, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there as someone who does use all modes of transportation and would like to see more ways to get around the city on a bike.
Okay, Brendan, appreciate the call. Thanks for it.
Thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. I've said on this show many times that people generally, and I'm not critical of anybody who does so, but people who are upset and oppose things are more motivated to call talk radio than people who don't, right? I think that's logical. Mm-hmm. Virginia, what are your thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, Sam?
It's the same with contacting council.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's right. Or writing letters to the editor or anything like that.
And
or commenting
that's
on social
just
media.
human nature.
That's right.
We're more motivated when we see something that we find wrong to reach out and try and correct that versus if you see something that you think is great.
Right, and that's not criticizing anybody.
No,
that's
it's human nature.
It's human nature.
Exactly.
All right.
So I did manage to get all the way back. The month review for January, and it's actually way higher than I thought it was. This is for the whole month, 14,918 bikes for January. So basically in the summer, what is equivalent of 1 week ridership right now is equal to a whole month in January. So it is about a quarter of the usership.
Okay, fair enough.
But still, almost 15,000 trips counted in the depth of winter.
Okay, 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, continuing with our counselors, 902-405-6000. Chris has given us a call. Chris, I assumed you'd want to get in on the conversation today, and I was right.
No, Todd, come on now. Am I that predictable? Yeah, no, I like to get in on the conversation once in a while. Look, Todd, I think you had mentioned this, or maybe not, and I'm sorry if you didn't, that you or someone thought the Premier was out of his lane on weighing in.
No, I asked. I'm asking people,
okay.
Is he out of his lane?
Yeah. Okay, well, personally, I don't think he is out of his lane at all. I think it's well within his purview to be looking at this sort of thing. After all, the province does have jurisdiction over the municipalities, and HRM is approximately 50% of the voting population of Nova Scotia, and certainly a heck of a lot more than 50% of the economics of Nova Scotia, of the economy. So if the Premier were not paying attention, I would be definitely, as one taxpayer, I would be faulting him for not paying attention. Sam, you had made a comment about within HRM, it's with a strong mayor situation, you'd have a who you know, not what you know type of scenario when it comes to hiring and firing. Well, in my opinion, I'm sure a lot of other people's opinion, municipal government and all levels of government kind of works like that now. What would the big difference be? When was the last time? And first of all, who has the jurisdiction or the authority to fire a staff member or one of the bureaucrats in HRM?
So right now in our current system, the council hires the CAO, and then the authority rests with the CAO. So council, if we don't like what's happening in the municipality, our recourse is to take our issues to the CAO, and if we don't appreciate how they're dealing with them, we can ultimately let the CAO go. And so that's the current accountability mechanism.
Okay, so when was the last time you did that?
It hasn't been in my time that we fired the CAO. Like people get fixated. Let me finish, please. People get fixated on whether or not you've hired or fired. There's a whole spectrum of feedback that lies in between those two extremes.
Yeah, and don't you? I don't mean about firing the CAO. About recommending to the CAO to fire any staff members. You can't recall ever doing that in your
We never do that, because that is not an appropriate place for council to be. Our role is to hire the CAO. The CAO's job is to run the organization. We judge the CAO by the performance of the organization. But if you it just opens it up to so much to corruption and abuse if council is picking and choosing staff, throughout the organization, who has a job and who doesn't.
Yeah, well, it certainly should be opened up, I think, and the mayor is the only one who runs in the municipal election that gets voted on by all HRM residents. So, in my opinion, and I'm sure you've got to agree with this, that the mayor should have more powers than an individual councillor, should he or she not, because it's the entire HRM that gets to vote for mayor.
So, one of the things I think you're hitting on something here that isn't well understood out there, which is the mayor in our current system, it's not written down on paper, already has much more power than normal councillors. The mayor has the ability, by being elected at large, to set the agenda in chairing council meetings. There's opportunities for leadership that councillors don't have. By being the go-to spokesperson for the municipality, there's an ability to set the agenda. The mayor has an office staff that is responsible just to him. Virginia and I share, each councillor shares a half-time civil service assistant, right? The system already gives the mayor the ability to lead and have more power than councillors because of the virtue they're elected. By way of example, when Mike Savage was mayor, when he would leave the chair to argue for a position, occasionally he would be leaving the chair to argue for a position, on a contentious debate in which I was on the other side of his perspective. Do you know what my reaction in those moments was when he would do that? Was, oh, damn, I just lost, because the mayor would carry council. So I think, there already is a lot of soft power in that position. It's a question of whether the person in the chair knows how to use it.
Well, I would have to push back a little on that. We don't have time for that now, but the mayor only has one vote. That's the whole point. And you had indicated in one of your comments that no one ran on a strong mayor powers. Well, we never voted, Sam, with all due respect, we never voted as taxpayers and voters to a $100 million cost overrun and waste on bike lanes either. You guys knew about this, or should have known about it, during budget deliberation time and also election time. Did you or did you not know about it at those times?
No, the report, I forget the date of the report. It was maybe March or April. Virginia, do you remember?
March. I think it was March.
Yeah, the report on the go-forward cost of this, that's when it broke.
Yeah, that's during budget time.
No, it was information report to Transportation Standing Committee. I don't remember the exact date of it. It's been in the last couple of months. It wasn't part of our budget deliberations. The budget deliberations on active transportation were the current year projects, which are fully funded and are still receiving our share of provincial federal.
I understand that, but how can a project go that much of a cost overrun and no one knows about it or is willing to talk about it?
Well, that's
we
what
deserve
came
to know.
forward.
Okay, let him answer. Let him answer, Chris. Chris, let him answer.
Well, that's what came forward in terms of a report, which now is generating another report, which will then inform our budget deliberations going forward. There's always a process for things to come forward. You think about like some of our other projects, whether it's the Forum or Windsor Street Exchange, everything we've touched in the last couple of years since COVID, every single thing is coming back over budget.
Well, of course it's coming back over budget. And don't you think that these things, when they keep coming back over budget, you guys should put a pause on them? I mean, it's financially and fiscally responsible for you guys to do that. That's our tax dollars that you're throwing around here. We can't afford this stuff. And when all these programs come back over budget, don't you think there's a few of them that should be canceled?
Okay.
We can't afford this.
Okay.
So some of the hard decision-making on capital planning is already getting underway. We had 2 reports at our council meeting this last week looking at long-term sustainability of the municipality, and one of them is actually to look at capital projects. The big challenge is that what is important to one group of individuals is not important to another, and that's the tough job that Virginia and I and everyone on council has of trying to deal with limited resources and trying to make the most of them and deliver as much good to as many people as possible.
Okay, that's going to have to do it, Chris. We're out of time. Councillors, thanks for doing it. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, listen, folks, got lots of people on the line. If you want to remain on hold and have your say during the open hour, please do so, because we've got an open hour, 902-405-6000. Again, if you're on hold and you want to continue to have your say, do so, 902-405-6000. Thanks to our Councillor Sam Austin and Virginia Hinch. The open hour when we come back. All right, we've got an open hour. What is on your mind today? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Perhaps some of you might want to respond to what you just heard with the councillors or whatever else you've got in your mind. Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Cassandra's on hold. Hello, Cassandra.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to call about what the other gentleman said about he never hears from bike riders.
Yeah.
So I'm a bike rider and just wanted to say that I bike from Spryfield to downtown on a regular basis. And frequently, I think people in traffic don't see bike riders because we're avoiding traffic. I bike on the Chain Lakes Trail, and so I take the really long way to get from Spryfield to downtown. I'd prefer a safe route that's a little bit more direct on the road. So when drivers aren't seeing bikes, that might be why I think there's a bit of a disconnect between how many people are biking and how many bikers are being seen in traffic. And then in terms of the budget context, I keep hearing this $100 million figure, and people sometimes say a year, and they forget that that's the cost of an entire network over 5 or 10 years. So in each year, if you look at the report, the most in any year is 15 million to 25 million. Every single year, the city spends 50 million and the province spends 500 million on maintaining highways. So if you sort of look at a proportion of the budget, I think it's the cost relative to what's spent on cars is probably what we spend on maintaining roads for cars. It's probably proportional what we're spending on these bike lanes in terms of how many people are biking. So if people could keep the figures in some sort of context, it would be really helpful.
I think, Cassandra, though, the concern is the cost overrun, right? It is a stark difference between 20 million originally budgeted to 100 million, or I don't know if it's quite 100 million, but I think that's the concern that people have.
Oh, of course. And I think Councillor Patty Cuddle in the debate had a great point about what is included in these cost overruns. Are we talking about placemaking and projects appended to this, or is it the cost of the construction itself? So I think the direction of council in getting a report on the cost overruns is 100% valid. I think as a bike rider, I don't want to see all this backlash about these cost overruns, right? I want infrastructure to be boring again. So if they can identify the source of some of these cost overruns and look at how we're planning this infrastructure, that'd be great. But I think people have really got to keep in context some of the amounts and the figures they're using.
Yeah, for sure. Cassandra, appreciate the call. Thank you.
Thanks for taking
Take
my
care.
call. Have a good day.
All right, 902-405-6000. Gary's giving us a call. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Todd. How you doing today?
I'm well, you?
That's good. I'm good, thanks.
Great.
Sorry I missed the counselors. I was going to ask, when does anybody know when the last time those counters had been calculated?
You mean calibrated or checked?
Calibrated, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because I think that would be an interesting question to put forward to the counselors.
Well, you don't feel as though they're accurate? Is that what you're getting at, Gary?
Well, from traveling around in the city, on the peninsula as well, I just don't see the bikes that are using the bike lanes. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm in the wrong spot, but when you go through downtown and you see where 2 lanes of traffic used to be, down to 1 lane, and then they say, because of bike lanes, like, for instance, Water Street, Hollis Street, and now they're looking at Morris. And then they say there's a lot of traffic congestion. The city is growing. Cars are going to be on the road. Nobody's going to give up their cars. That's known. It just doesn't make sense to me with the cost overruns, why they don't pause, take a look at it. I think Mayor Fillmore had a good point.
Okay, Gary, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi, Todd. Yeah, I just want to comment on strong powers for the mayor. Just first, the reason we have the sort of municipal government we have, a sort of staff-run municipality, is that the idea was to sort of, municipal government's about service delivery and to take politics out of the things of like sewage, water, fire protection. But the sort of thing is that local government isn't just about service delivery, and things like, say, bike routes or painted sidewalks are political in nature and involve value judgments, and that's why you should have sort of some form of democratic representation. But in terms of the Premier's comments, that's not the sort of nuanced stance that he took. He basically said that he doesn't like the decisions council has been making and therefore wants to give the mayor stronger powers. But isn't that democracy? You give people the power to choose. Sometimes they'll choose things you don't like, or they'll even make mistakes. So what's he going to do? Gerrymander the results? Gerrymander the system to get the results he wants? And my sort of questions would be, well, what happens next time if a mayor is elected who makes decisions that Tim Houston doesn't like? Is he going to take those powers away? And I guess the sort of other question is sort of the Premier on his own qualified to make such a big change to the nature of municipal governance in this province? And if it's something that we should look at, shouldn't there be some sort of independent commission, some sort of panel that could take a look at this, consider all the factors, and hopefully sort of, make some recommendations based on sort of best practices and stuff like that. So, yeah, just such a big change the way it's going about, and for the reasons that the Premier stated, I don't really think it's good, at least in the way it's happening.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for the call, David. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Sean, hello. Hi, Sean.
One sec. No. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Sorry, there was just buddy came to the truck.
No problem.
So Todd, I just want to talk about the EV mandate. I think we have a huge conflict of interest here with that. Not only the craziness of the whole thing, but so we all know that Mark Curran still holds blind trust with Brookfield Assets, right? We're on the same page with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they're in a blind trust, so we can't see them. So here's where the conflict of interest comes in, Todd, and I find it really disturbing. But in 2019, Brookfield Management acquired a company called Caleres. Now, Caleres is the third leading company, now it's under Brookfield Management, but they're the third biggest company in the world on producing EV batteries. So they're going to benefit off these government policies in a massive way. And not only are they involved in the batteries, but now Brookfield is trying to acquire businesses that are in development of infrastructure for EVs via charging stations, infrastructure related to that. So I don't understand how we can have a prime minister who holds probably millions of dollars in assets of this company that is about to profit massively on an EV mandate for Canadians. Do you not think that's a little like corrupt and concerning?
Well, from what I can kind of read the tea leaves, I predict that the Liberal government will drop the EV mandate. I don't think that they'll follow through with it. I don't think politically they can.
But if there's a bigger behind it, like I said, this Brookfield management and all this involvement in EVs and stuff, like we have a prime minister who has worked for two companies that profit massively off the backs of Canadians. One being the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private entity who makes its money off the interests of Canadians, therefore dictating Canadian government policies by spending massive amounts of money, which we don't have, benefits the private Western Central Bank, as we know here, the Canadian Federal Bank, which is, again, a private entity, a business in itself that's under disguise of Canadian. But think about it, Todd, like we don't just borrow money from Canada, the land. This money's coming from a some sort. So we have a prime minister that used to work for two companies that is going to benefit both of these entities.
Well, Sean, I just said I don't think he's going to. I think the EV mandate's going to get scrapped. That's my opinion. So that if he met with manufacturers last week or a couple of weeks ago, and the vehicle manufacturers felt good about the meeting, and based on what's happening in the United States and the fact that they've walked away from EV mandates. I don't think that he's gonna. I think they're gonna drop them.
Yeah, but that's the thing. But Todd, you're not. Are you missing the whole point of this?
No, I'm not missing the point of it.
Corruption. It's corruption at the highest.
Well, Sean, if he drops the mandates and therefore Brookfield management, as you say, would be the massive benefit. So what you're saying is that Carney's saying, "Hell with the country. I just care about my millions, and I'm gonna pass an EV mandate." Is that what you're saying?
If he does not drop the mandate, then yes, 100%, Todd. I mean, they bought Caleres at $13.9 billion.
Okay, so let's have a chat. Let's have a chat about this then. If they don't drop the mandate, because until then we don't know.
But it's corruption.
Well,
Todd.
You don't know that, Sean. So let's say
brought it in and said they were going to continue it. There was no talks about scrapping it. There's no talks.
Yes,
about
yes, there is talks. He met with the industry leaders a couple of weeks ago, and it was widely reported that they felt good about the meeting. He listened to them, and he's considering dropping the mandates.
Considering dropping the mandate.
That's right.
Okay, so we're on record now, so we'll have this conversation in the next couple weeks because. If we start seeing infrastructure projects ramp up with more millions of dollars of Canadian money going into like Arrive scam apps and stuff like that, then we need to seriously, the RCMP needs to step in and find out what are in these blind trusts. Because right now, people accuse me of saying, you don't give Mark Carney a chance. You haven't given him a chance. Well, you know what? He has a very slim thing, and I tried to give him a chance, but you know what? The first thing he did was convince Sean Fraser to come back into the party, and who destroyed two major portfolios in this country, and is now running our justice on a part-time basis, so he can still be with his family. He brought in the same. How am I supposed to trust and give him the benefit of being the new prime minister when all this stuff just keeps piling out and piling out and piling out? Like, it's unbelievable that Canadians are sitting here and say, "Oh, don't worry, give him time, give him time." How much time does one need, Todd? He's been in office now for what? 8 months? 6 months?
No, it hasn't been 8 months. The election was this spring.
Months? So, saying that, how many immigrants, new Canadians, do you think have come into this country since he said they were backing down on that?
Anyway, Sean, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We need a break. We'll be back. All right, give us a call, folks. What's on your mind today? The way to reach us again is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Quick email from Colin and back to the phones. Colin says, it's an open secret. Political parties help council candidates with their campaigns, even though councillors are independent. Well, rather than give the mayor total control over the municipality, why not just make council part of the parties? Each district would have a Liberal candidate, a Conservative candidate, and an NDP candidate, etc. During the election, then council would have a majority or a minority and function no different than the provincial or federal level. Makes sense to me. That comes from Colin. 902-405-6000. What's on your mind today? Gustavo, hello.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Quite frankly, Todd, I called this time because sincerely I took an issue with Mr. Sean's last statement. So just before hanging up, he said Mark Carney appointed Mr. Sean Fraser for just as minister. Imagine how many immigrants are going to be allowed into the country while this is happening. And, Sean Fraser, according to Sean, grew two portfolios. I guess he was referring when Sean Fraser was immigration minister and housing minister. So I'm an immigrant myself, and honestly, I took an issue with that statement because the way he phrased it seems like it's a ticking time bomb. It's a ticking clock that, oh my God, so many immigrants are being allowed in when the government has confirmed they're going to back down on immigration. Well, it doesn't quite happen like that. Immigration is an issue that has to be dealt with in a case-by-case basis. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with human beings and with persons who come here with the intent to work hard. And I don't think that was quite honest. And I do agree with his point. There's a conflict of interest between with Mr. Mark Carney's assets, and that has to be at some point investigated or made clear, but I think it's too early to call it corruption. And then he made a mass of his argument saying, oh, we're going to have a new arrive scan scandal. I don't think he was even very clear on his point. So I understand the frustration with the Liberal government, with the corruption scandals, but I don't think we have to mix things. I think we have to be more sensitive towards immigration and be more considerate on our statements. When you just say something like, how many immigrants are going to be allowed when Sean Fraser is again at the government, it's not like that. It's not a ticking time bomb. It's not a ticking clock, and we're allowing people in. It's not like that. And also, I have many friends who are struggling a lot because most of the immigration policies have changed abruptly, and those people, they made a plan on one sort of immigration policies, and after they came here, everything has changed, and it's really hard. It's a real struggle, and we're dealing with a large part of the Canadian workforce. So I think we should be more considerate. And Canada has always had immigrants of all ethnicities, and it's just right now that Canada has opened up to people with different creeds and different skin colors that some people become more frustrated, like this Mr. Sean seemed to be. So.
Well, I think, Gustavo, I think what he was getting at and was that the number of immigrants has been disproportionate, and the federal government and the Liberals have admitted that they got it wrong when it comes to how many people they were allowing to come into the country because of infrastructure and housing and other supports, social services, social support network, such as healthcare, that we're able to pay for. So I think that was what he was saying, but what are your thoughts?
I agree with that 100%. I've called before to say that I feel guilty because immigration has not kept up with the infrastructure. The government has not planned well. I think the Liberal government propagandized immigration. They made I think it was a marketing scam for everybody that lived outside of the country, almost as if it was guaranteed a good life in Canada, prosperous life in Canada. But that came from a prime minister, the same prime minister that we're welcoming, we're seeing in photos with women in hijabs, from Muslim creed, was the same person who 10 years before had been seen painted in blackface, painted in black. So I think that's a poor example of how the liberals used immigration as propaganda more than specific, economics studies, economic factors, and therefore they didn't keep up. And I dislike Sean Fraser. I didn't like that he was running in Pictou County. There was a young conservative, I think his name was Jan Perkins, and he didn't win, and it's sad because I don't think Sean Fraser has a good legacy within the government. That's my personal opinion. And if this gentleman Sean tackled the issue of economics, workforce, okay, but quite honestly, as I said, I took an issue with the way he phrased it. Like, how many immigrants are going to be allowed when the government said they're going to back down? Well, it's not quite like that, buddy, because when you're dealing with immigration, like I said, people have to think about it in a case-by-case census, right? And even with the people who are here, I don't think they should, if your visa expiring, your work visa expiring, you shouldn't be said, oh, now you have to go back, regardless of the amount of taxes you have paid, regardless of how much you have contributed and how much effort you've put into this country. Now you just have to go back. I don't think it's like that. I think it's mostly about the image that the government is portraying out of country, and that was the big mistake that the Liberals did within the last 10 years.
Okay, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. We've got open lines for you, folks. Give us a call. What's on your mind today? Perhaps you might want to get in on some of the things you've heard already, or maybe you want to raise your own issue or concerns. 902-405-6000. We've got open lines for you. The open hour continues when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Tim's giving us a call. Hello, Tim.
Hey, Todd. I was wanting to ask the counselors this, but I was talking to somebody recently, and they were talking about the contract to rent out the e-bikes.
Yeah.
And what I was told was that there was already a business here doing it, but it was put out to tender, given to a new company, and so there was already the existing company that had a big investment in it, given to a new company, and the new company was given like $1 million grant to start the new business. I just wanted to know, ask the counselors if that was true. It just sounds crazy.
Yeah, I don't have the answer for you, but anyway, it's an interesting story. We should follow up on it. It's a good question, Tim.
Yeah, that was it. I just want to ask the counselor if that was true or not. It just seems unbelievable to me that if you have a business here that's already doing it and you choose somebody else and actually give them money to start a business.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Dan, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Very good, Todd. Just recently retired from Bell Aliant after the best part of 36 years, and just on the bike issue, I drove into downtown Halifax, South Park, South Street every day, and I saw very few bikers. Very few. The only bikers I saw, to be honest, would creep up beside you at a red light and try to sneak by all the cars. And I heard a person the other day on your show say, well, I saw a car in front of me purposely go over to the curb so I couldn't go by them. They're supposed to abide to the same rules of the road, I think, as we are. And the only other subject I'll have is the Waverly Road is a huge place for bikers, and somebody's going to get killed on the Waverly Road. There is no shoulder. It's a very narrow road. It's really, really turny, a lot of corners. And when you see a bike coming, either somebody's going to have a head-to-head collision with another car or a bike's going to end up in trouble. I've heard this on your show before. Anyway, great show. You take the most part of my retired days out here in the workshop making furniture. I listen to you. God love you. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Open line for you folks. Give us a call. What is on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. This email, a couple emails. We got open lines for you again, folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Lee says this, so sick of hearing bikers talk about how much the province and city spend on roads. Our drivers pay heavy gas taxes and registration costs, which pay more than enough to pay for the road. Building and upkeep, bikers pay zilch. That comes from Lee. And the counter to that, of course, would be the bicyclists would say that they pay, in many cases, property taxes, or if they live in apartment buildings, they would subsidize property taxes through that. So that would be the response. But I take your point. I don't know that it's a fair comparison to just say that because we put a lot of money into road infrastructure, therefore it justifies bicycle infrastructure. I get your point completely. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000 on Merrill Powers. This one from this email, it says, funny we didn't need an independent commission when a Liberal premier decided to amalgamate the former cities and counties and create HRM. Keep in mind, very few citizens wanted this amalgamation, but then Premier needed to hide the financial mess he made while being mayor of Dartmouth. All right, that email, 902-405-6000. Again, give us a call, folks. This on Strong Mayor. I already read that email from Colin. Sorry. All right, so folks, give us a call. What's on your mind today? 902-405-6000. Perhaps you might want to get in on this continuing ongoing conversation surrounding active transportation. Or I think this whole Strong Mayor debate is very interesting. I think it's pretty evident that you're going to see Strong Mayor Powers in HRM this fall. I think that's coming. I think it's pretty evident based on the Premier, who has the supermajority and can do so, and I think it's coming. I think it's a no doubter. 902-405-6000. Roman's giving us a call. Hello, Roman.
Hi. Boy, that was quick. I just called. Every once in a while on your show, I hear people insurance and they should pay fees. And I mean, I can't imagine how that would ever work. You know, you think about it, your car insurance is, say you have a $40,000 car, you pay $1,000 a year, which is, I don't know, whatever the percentage is. So would that mean, if you had a $500 bike, be like, what, $25 a year? So obviously, and you couldn't make it more than the cost of the bike. So I don't know. I can't even imagine insurance companies really wanting to get involved in something like that. I'm not a biker myself, but I just can't imagine, that practically that could ever work, having insurance.
Well, the insurance debate, Roman, I think is more about the liability if a bike hits another vehicle or a bike runs over somebody or something like that. I think that is more the debate over liability, not the property protecting of the bike.
No, I agree, but I know some people mention sometimes somebody runs into their car and they can't do anything. But again, I really can't even imagine an insurance company wanting any part of that, because how would you? It's like a lot of things. How would you ever enforce it? Or the police aren't. I don't know. It's this whole bike thing is. I'm not a biker myself, and I know it's coming, but I don't know. I just wonder about, people mention this insurance thing once in a while, and I just can't even fathom.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, Roman, but I do think that it's a legitimate issue that if you're in traffic and a bicycle scrapes your vehicle or a bicycle runs somebody over and could potentially injure or kill somebody doing so, where is the financial liability there? And I think that's a legitimate concern.
I agree. 100%. Anyway, just as I say, just.
Okay, thanks for the call.
On the insurance.
Okay, take care. Bye. I agree that it's not going. I don't think you're ever going to see the requirement for bicyclists to need insurance, but I agree that there is a question about liability. Andrew, hello.
How you doing, Todd? Thanks
well,
for the show.
Sure.
Just 3 quick points on bike lanes, and then I'll hang up or attempt to.
Sure.
Number one, the roads are shrinking. We got bus lanes, and now we got bike lanes, and we got to think more when we're thinking about the council and the city about moving people around. And with those things shrinking, the money in my mind shouldn't go so much to bike lanes. There's certainly a need for some bike lanes, but more so for better public transit. The dedicated bus lanes and now the bike lanes creeping in on where the cars would normally go. The only way for that to work is much better transit. That's number one. Number two, when I think about usage of the bike lanes, I think about the number of people at my work, and maybe other people should think about that too, but the number of people at their work that they see actually biking to work. So how many bikes are out in the bike rack out front of your work every day? And in my experience, it's very few. And that brings me to my third point of it's more about the perception of when we build these bike lanes, it's more about the perception of attracting people to the idea of, wouldn't it be nice? What a wonderful thing that I could bike to work, which it would be. But then when I hear about people at work who do make the attempt to bike to work, they kind of regret it. They're like, geez, I woke up this morning and I thought it was going to be an idealistic day for me to get on my bike and make it to work, but it took forever and it wasn't safe and I'll never do it again. So it's more about attracting people to the city of a notion of, yeah, we're friendly to bikers, but really, with the way the city's built, with the small streets, the hills, and the gaps in the bike lane network, and just the culture, the car culture, it's not really conducive to a friendly biking culture.
Okay, Andrew, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. William, hello.
Yes, good morning, Todd.
Hi there.
I have two quick questions. One is on this bike thing, and I think everyone's made enough points on this. We're going around in circles. What I have a problem with is the cost. I just don't get it. I just, I'm old school. We drove on the street. We didn't have any of those protections. But in any event, it's the cost that really bothering me the most. It just doesn't make any sense. Second question is something I've been wanting to ask you for quite some time. Because I do listen to your show when I'm in my car. It's not that frequent, but I listen to your show. And I look forward to it. You had a earlier caller who was talking about, the Prime Minister's conflict of interest and such. But I'm not so much going to comment on that because I think it's important. I think we do have infrastructures within the government that checks on these people to make sure that they're not doing stuff. What I have a problem with is, could someone please tell me what is the difference between a conservative and a liberal? We seem to have this, animosity. It's almost like a hatred. I can't understand if the people out in Alberta, for example, want to have more say or get their way in. Why don't they elect liberals? I just don't get it. But what is the policy? What is it that makes one different than the other? Okay, it doesn't make no sense because they both do the same thing. So, anyway, that's all I wanted to say, Todd. Maybe you should have that question, have that as a topic one day. What is the difference? And final thing, the Conservatives have never, ever, from the day I started watching with John Diefenbaker, have ever implemented a social policy, whether it be unemployment insurance, old age security, universal health. They've never done that. It's always been a liberal government. Obviously some of it's been encouraged with the NDP saying, you got to do it. But in any event, tell me one thing the Conservatives, and name one Conservative government that has ever ran.
Well, you just asked what's the difference between the Liberals and Conservatives. Sound like you already have your mind made up on. There's a big difference based on what you just said.
But, like I said, you would think that a lot of these callers that are calling in don't really know that. It's just like, what is this hatred? What is this, it just seemed like that caller was just so incensed on talking about Carney and his conflict of interest as if somehow, there has never been a problem with a conservative leader. But in any event, that's all I wanted.
Okay, William. All right. I appreciate the call.
I would love to hear that debate.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Gloria's giving us a buzz. Hello, Gloria.
Oh, what a beautiful morning, Todd.
Yeah, not bad at all, eh?
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Todd, I wasn't at a call, but I suffered through that council meeting the other night when Austin brought in the motion for consultation, and it reminded me of how little consultation they've had about bikes. But that's not why I'm calling. I want to talk about how the meeting went, Todd. The meeting was to force the mayor to write a letter to the premier asking that the councillors be consulted. The mayor said he has a conflict. He didn't want to write the letter. Well, they went all around the table. He has to write the letter. So Hensby suggested that the CAO could write the letter. Well, then the question was to the solicitor, can the CAO write the letter? Well, yes. And then the CAO, it would have to go to the deputy premier. Why couldn't the CAO write to the premier? Then the mayor came on and he said, after they voted that he had to write it, he said, I will write it, but I will write my own letter. Well, then Becky Kent to the solicitor, is he allowed to write his own letter? And the solicitor said, anybody can write a letter, but he can't say he's writing on behalf of the councillor. So then she turned to the mayor and said, what are you going to put in that letter? You tell us. If you don't, we will foy pop it. Now, Todd, these are the people that are getting paid $100,000 a year to represent us. And that's the way the meeting went on. You know, you sit back and you shake your head. It is the most dysfunctional council I have ever, and I've seen a few of them. And this is the payoff.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I can add to that, but
I don't think you can add much to it, Todd. I just want people to know that those who don't watch it, that was the exact conversation that went on. Now, this sounds like a bunch of children, not adults. Anyway, I'll leave you with that, Todd.
Okay, thanks,
and
Gloria.
have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Stephen, hello. Hi, Stephen. Stephen, are you there? Yeah, I'll put Stephen on hold and go back to him. Adrian, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm fine, thanks. It's my first time on the show.
Great.
And I'm really enjoying listening. And what I'm calling about today is there was a lot of talk about the Prime Minister and his blind trust that seemed to be controversial. I believe that people should learn what a blind trust is, first of all, before they speak against it, that it's a conflict of interest, etc. A blind trust, Mr. Carney doesn't have any control over it anymore. That's what it means. It's ran by others on his behalf. Okay?
Yeah.
He has no say about how it is invested, where it is invested, and he has absolutely no control over it. And it's his right to have investments. We live in a free country after all, eh? So I somewhat disagreed with the gentleman's, saying that there was a controversy there. Plus, it went through the proper people to check on it.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have people who do that for our prime ministers.
Well, Adrian, I will say that when it comes to the blind trust, you know what assets you have. Then the how they're managed is out of your purview. But he knows that he's got assets in Brookfield Management, right? That he knows. He's not. He can't monitor it. He can't make. He can't get himself involved in it, but he knows that he has big investments in Brookfield. I think we'd agree with that, right?
Oh, yes, he does.
Yeah.
He does, of course. But he has the right to have investments wherever he was. And those investments were made in the past before he was prime minister.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree, yeah.
And let's be honest here. If you have an investment that makes good profit, why wouldn't you keep it?
No, I agree with that, but I guess, and I'm not, and look, I understand what you're saying, and I would hope that Mark Carney is not directing policy of the federal government based on feathering his own nest, based on Brookfield Management and what he thinks through that blind trust. would benefit Brookfield. I think that's an accusation that is, unless you have proof. Look, it's.
That's right. I wish I would see some kind of proof that he is dishonest, but at the moment there are none. There are none really.
There is no proof. That's right. It's all speculation and conjecture for sure. It is. I agree with that.
Yeah. So I would like to see people make an issue of something that there are real reasons to make an issue with. Or else you're just sitting around bitching about something that really you don't know enough about. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate the call. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, take care. 902-456-0000. Joe, hello.
Hey, Todd, hope you're having a nice day.
Not bad, yeah.
Yeah, good. Look, Todd, I'm going to change gears here for a moment, if you'll allow me. I just wanted to say that I'm a long-time listener to the show, and you and Dan both, you need to listen to a lot of people every day who mistake their own opinion for fact. And most of these people are misinformed, or they don't have a good idea of the broader picture. It's almost like a lot of people have blinders on, and like I say, they mistake their own opinion for facts. And I just wanted to say that you and Dan both do a really, really good job of dealing with these people on a day-to-day basis. I think that you're doing a really fantastic job. I don't think that people get enough credit for the things that they do in society today. And I just wanted to give you my 10 cents worth and say that you're doing a good job, and keep it up, buddy.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, take care. You as well. Stephen, hello.
Hey, Todd. Happy Monday.
Yeah.
I pushed the wrong button. I thought I hit take it off speakerphone, and I hit mute.
It's okay, no problem.
You're having a all over the racetrack Monday today, aren't you?
Yeah. It's good though. That's good.
Good. I like it. And I know there's very limited time left, and you probably want to get to another caller. So, Gloria, I generally don't agree with her, but holy crow, I just completely agree with her. Your last two callers, fantastic. Hit things on the mark. And in 2004, Stephen Harper ran on closing what was called the Venetian Blind Trust, and there was another one about if you cross the floor and you have interest in another company, you can retain those interests. Mm-hmm. Stephen Harper ran on that. Guess what? He didn't pass. So for our conservative friends out there, they had a decade of Stephen Harper not carrying through on his election promises to close those loopholes either. So that, and I'm really getting tired of bike lanes. I'm sorry. It's going to happen. It's a cost overrun. We're all upset about it. It's going to happen. I don't think there's anything we're going to change about it. We can mope and complain about it all we want, but I don't think there's a councillor on the council that's going to change their minds the way it is right now. That's just my opinion.
Well, I would say, Stephen, that the provincial government could step in, and I think that's a real possibility that'll happen.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of an overreach, but yeah, you're right. They're already overreaching, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Have a awesome day and a great week.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. Claudia Chender when we come back. All right, joining the show is the official opposition leader in Nova Scotia, Claudia Chender. Claudia, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your participation, of course.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, before I get to the topic of tariffs, I want to quickly get your opinion, if you have one, on the Premier and his weighing in on issues of HRM Council, in particular bike lanes and strong mare powers and those types of issues. What are your thoughts? Is that appropriate?
Well, Todd, I've been in this job for 8 years, and I represent a chunk of HRM, as do most of my colleagues. And so we watch what happens in this city really closely. And for the most part, what we see is a pretty healthy, functional democratic system. And not everybody's happy all the time. But, often we see, people are frustrated. People are frustrated with traffic right now. I'm frustrated with traffic right now. There's no question. But we're going through unprecedented growth. And so I think we should always be able to talk about our democracy and how things go forward. But this doesn't feel like much of a conversation. So, I have a lot of respect for Andy Fillmore. He's been in public office for a long time. But from a systemic point of view, whether it makes sense to impose strong mayor powers when we don't really know what the logic of that is, I would say, I think that deserves much more debate and thoughtfulness than it seems to be getting.
Yeah, and you kind of get the idea that it's because it really there's no other reason to consider it is that they're having active conversations kind of between the mayor and the premier and again, I'm not sure that these types of decisions should be based on one-on-one conversations. What are your thoughts?
Well, exactly. And so I think the reality is if you change the system, so we've had a somewhat similar democratic municipal system for almost 200 years here in Halifax. And I was actually just reading this morning, it was put in place because of corruption and to fight corruption. And the idea was that if you kind of equally weight that democratic decision making and you have a mayor who is a leader, who really represents our city in lots of ways, but who is among peers when it comes to votes in our very diverse municipality, that is a really good, strong system of checks and balances and representation. That's what we have to think about. It's not about Andy Fillmore and Tim Houston. It's about all the mayors and premiers that we're going to have in the future. And so while it might make sense now for some short-term goals of the province that they want to be able to get through against some opposition in the current makeup of council, to me, that is not a good enough reason. There has to be a real argument for why it's a superior system. And I don't think that argument's been made or even attempted. So I agree with you, Todd. I think it has to be beyond personal relationships, and it has to be about what is a system of governance that's going to serve Nova Scotians, and in this case, that's going to serve the residents of HRM. And, almost half the province lives in this municipality. We've got rural parts of the municipality. We've got urban parts of the municipality. We have well-serviced and underserviced. And all of those places deserve a voice, and they just voted to have a voice. So I think the premier should proceed with a lot of caution.
Do you think that it's inevitable that they're going to move in this direction? I do, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that nothing is inevitable. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this job, Todd. I think that, the citizens should have their say. I think it's easy. Again, I really share the frustration that people have with the growing pains our city is going through. But I think it's really helpful for people to step back and think about, is this really the fix we need, or can we just have a discussion at council about how we deal with that? Can we have a discussion with the province? I want to really remind your listeners that when it comes to things like traffic, this government implemented an entire agency to look at how we move people around the city and the province, and they refuse to release that report. The province already has a ton of leverage around these things that they are not exercising. And so I think people should maybe be a little suspicious when their stated goal is to, fix a problem that they have a lot of tools to fix that they're not using. So we have a lot more questions when it comes to all of this, for sure.
Okay, and also the fact that they have very few seats in this within HRM is perhaps another cause or pause for thought. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it means that it's more important than ever that we have a good functioning kind of democratic representation in this city. And certainly, many of my colleagues and I have our ear to the ground and a pretty good understanding how our residents feel. And, many of us have just recently been reelected, which I think validates that. But I think that, Tim Houston and his government are farther away from that reality. I think that they don't have the ear and the confidence of as many people in this municipality. And so I think they should be careful, and I think they should be listening to people and the needs that they have. I think they also want to exploit challenges, as they often have, and as many governments do. And so I think they may want to seize upon this notion of congestion to earn themselves some goodwill. But again, I think it's so important to understand that they are sitting on information and solutions that will that could directly solve a lot of those problems, and they're choosing not to act on them. My suspicion, Todd, is because some of those talk about things like investment in transit, maybe even investment in bike lanes, which is something that this government doesn't like, that, many residents have their own challenges with. But, it's their job, if they're going to use public funds to pay, a lot of public servants to spend a long time coming up with solutions, to share with us what those solutions are, not just what's politically expedient.
Okay, let's just shift gears and talk about tariffs. And we know with Donald Trump, the goalposts continue to move, and the deadlines and all that continues to move. What are your thoughts on what the provincial government could be or should be doing here in response to the tariff threats?
Well, I think we all still feel broadly like we need a Team Canada approach. And, I'll start by saying that I'm glad to see, the Council of the Federation and premiers across this country more or less joining together in that way. I think that's important at this moment, and I think it's important for Nova Scotia to be a part of that. And certainly we've seen lots of signals. But, when we talk about tariffs, it's like really abstract. You read a lot in the newspaper. But what that means to everyday people is things are going to cost more money. And affordability, as we've talked about lots of times, is a huge issue for people anyway. And so I think it's more important than ever that we focus on that affordability piece for Nova Scotians, knowing that this means that things may get more expensive, that our economy may suffer further. So that brings us back to things like housing. That brings us back to things like, purchasing patterns and, prioritizing local businesses and procurement. These are things that the government has paid some lip service to, but I think they're things that need really concerted attention. So, as we've talked about, Todd, it's like housing prices are rising in Nova Scotia like nowhere else. People are paying an enormous amount of their income on rent and on mortgage, and those things have to change. And again, these are places where our government has levers to act, and they're not using them. And so I think when we think about tariffs, when we think about the financial pressures that that's going to add to Nova Scotian families, we need a government that's focused on making life easier for Nova Scotian families. And, that's what we'll keep pushing for.
Okay, why do you think that they're not using those levers as you described them? What do you think's going on?
Well, I think there's always competing interests. I mean, if we take the Premier at his word, he says that he believes that the answer to the housing crisis is to build more housing. And surely he's been told that by, people who stand to benefit from building a lot of housing. What we've seen is that we have created a lot more supply in a very short amount of time. And for expensive rentals, so things, north of $3,000, I don't know the exact statistics, but they're out there, prices are coming down a little bit. And vacancy rates are coming down a little bit. They're coming down as low as 3%, which is sort of that magic number people want to see. But for housing people can actually afford, so like things that might be 30% of, the average Nova Scotian's rent, which is how much we're supposed to pay, vacancy hasn't budged and prices are going up because we're not creating affordable supply. And so hopefully when the Premier and his staff look at this information, they will revise their approach. And they will understand that creating really expensive supply, and by the way, I should say, some of that supply is really expensive just because it's expensive to build right now, right? Like it is. Like the reality is, I know that for many developers to raise a big new building out of the ground right now is more expensive than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And so then to recover costs, you got to charge more than you've ever charged. That's okay. That's their business. But if we talk about Nova Scotians needing a place to live, that's the business of government. And so government needs to incentivize creating those spaces. And they have lots of ways to do that. They can help to strengthen the non-market housing sector. They can incentivize preservation of existing rental properties that are affordable. They can help with equity investments for nonprofits who are going to create that kind of housing. And they do a little bit of that, but they don't do nearly enough. And beyond all of that, as we've talked about a lot of times, they can protect renters. They can make sure that people can stay in their apartment year over year by closing that fixed term lease loophole. And that one thing would change that bar graph where our rental prices are skyrocketing, because we've got a 5% rent cap, and every year the rental prices go up significantly higher than that. And that's because it's totally simple for landlords to circumvent that and to raise the rent as high as they want. So people have to pay, 10% more each year, usually, and they have to move. And so what do? They leave, because you can't live like that. I mean, imagine if you had to move every single year. And I talk to people every day in that situation. So, again, lots of levers, lots of ways to make life easier for Nova Scotians. Probably not, what the Premier's advisors who, have their own interests are telling him, but certainly it's what we hear from the Nova Scotians we talk to.
Okay, Claudia, appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, official opposition leader here in Nova Scotia. I saw this story on the CTV website. Canadian social media influencer warns about posting while vacationing. We'll get to this when we come back. All right, I saw the story on the CTV website. The headline, it's intimidating. Canadian social media influencer warns about posting while vacationing. Joining us to discuss all of this is Brian McLennan, the Chief Operating Officer for Skylar Security and Communications in Dartmouth. Brian, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so from a security standpoint of protecting your home, what are the pitfalls of people posting while away?
Yeah, so you're basically broadcasting to everyone on Earth that you're not home and your home is not protected, or no one is around to make sure that no one's breaking in. So that's pretty scary stuff.
Okay, so what can people do to protect themselves other than not do that, right?
Yeah, other than not do that. So one of the things that I do recommend is you can put on who can see your social media posts. So if you're the kind of person that absolutely wants to post that you're away, just make sure it's friends and family that already know that you're spending the weekend at the cottage. Another option is having an alarm system in place and cameras, so that way you get alerts if somebody is trying to break in. Getting an alarm system that sounds off, calls the police for you, definitely gives you that peace of mind. Having cameras that send notifications to you, letting you know someone's lurking around on the property. They may not even try and break in. They may just be taking a look to case the place for later on. So getting cameras that can send you alerts. Another one is smart lights. I know I mentioned them in the CTV interview. And have them set off, or have them set to go off at different times as well, so that way it looks like people are moving throughout the house.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of this is common sense, right? A lot of it is quite logical and not really expensive, not hard to implement, I guess is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, especially things like smart lights that can certainly help. Those are pretty inexpensive, and you can set them up on timers. You can set them up on your phone. So you can have them on your phone while you're away. You can decide whether the lights are coming on or not as well. So that's a pretty easy one that you can set up and use your smartphone in order to see that. Same thing with the cameras. You can look at the cameras. Maybe it could be a person lurking around. It could be a deer. So you can always take a look and go, oh, look, it's just a deer wandering through the backyard.
And also having somebody check in on your home, if possible, a friend or a neighbor, that's always a good thing, right, on a regular basis. Should do that anyway because of broken pipes or you never know what could happen.
Yeah, exactly. You having someone take a look and make sure that your house is fine. Maybe you have a pet that you leave. I don't know, you have pet goldfish, so you're having people check in on the house as well for that purpose. That's also helpful.
Okay, any other tips that you can give people or people should be cognizant of here?
Yeah, my biggest thing is definitely have a security system put in place. There's pretty inexpensive options when it comes to alarms that you can put in, even a Ring or a Nest doorbell, one of those, pop those ones in. Lights are really good options. Smart integrated technologies in general are really good. So alarm systems have even become a lot more complex. So even if a pipe bursts, you can have an alarm go off for you saying, hey, your water pipe burst is leaking everywhere or something has happened. So I highly recommend taking a look at some alarm systems, camera systems for sure, at the very least smart lights. And they're pretty cool to have smart lights around anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, if somebody's approaching your property and a bunch of lights turn on, that could be a deterrent in and of itself, right?
Yeah. There are even cameras out there now that I know that it's more prevalent in businesses than homes, but flash red and blue lights and can say, get off the property. So that way, if somebody's coming around at a time that they shouldn't be, the camera starts flashing those red and blue lights and telling you to get off. And that could also be a very big deterrent to run away.
For sure. Brian, good advice. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate your time.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Brian McLennan, Chief Operating Officer for Schuyler Security and Communications in Dartmouth. Previous to that chat, I had Claudia Chandra on the show, and I made mention that when it comes to HRM, that the majority of the seats were not held by the Progressive Conservatives. And I received this email from the Premier's office, and they say, contrary to repeated claims, Halifax Regional Municipality does have sitting MLAs. This is a fact, not opinion. When speaking to Claudia, it would suggest the PCs have few seats in HRM. Out of the 22 HRM seats, PCs hold 59% of them. It goes on to say, I didn't realize Dartmouth, Spryfield, Bedford, or Clayton Park West, to name a few, weren't part of HRM. And I responded and said I will correct the record because look, I should and did. I guess what I'm getting at is that the NDP this is their stronghold, right? That was kind of what I was getting at. That this is definitely the NDP stronghold, and perhaps that was part of what was at play when it comes to the Premier being, I guess, involved in the municipality and highly critical of the municipality, in particular, considering bike lanes is one of those hot button issues which the NDP certainly support, and rent control and other kind of key issues that that seem to be in lockstep with some of these districts in HRM. So. But in fairness, yes, you're absolutely correct. 59% of the seats in HRM, as I was told in this email, out of the 22 seats held by Progressive Conservatives. So I said I would correct the record, and there you go, folks. We'd like to keep it real, as they say on the show. When it comes to housing, lots of things to get to. Jeff Carabinow is a professor at Dalhousie University, co-director of Dal Social Work Community Clinic. Always a good chat. Jeff joins us when we come back. We'll be back. All right, joining me for a chat is Jeff Carabinow. Jeff Carabinow is the professor at Dalhousie University and co-director of Dal Social Work Community Clinic. Jeff, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
All right, so I saw a story on housing in the Chronicle Herald last week, and it talks about the fact that Halifax housing overwhelmed by population growth, and it gets into the average prices of single detached homes and gives a lot of empirical data and statistics. Mm-hmm. And as I was reading this and as I was prepping for this, I thought that, for the person out there that is on the outside looking in, or the person that can't afford their rent, or the dream of home ownership is out of reach and all of that, oftentimes politics don't matter and they don't care, right? I think what I'm getting at is that these conversations can become political and data driven, and we can somehow lose the human factor here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on an article right now around affordability in Nova Scotia, and I think our introduction of the chapter is about, it's not just about brick and mortar. It's not just about kind of political sways around different orientations around housing. It's about human beings. And it's about people feeling that they have a sense of home and a sense of safety. So you're absolutely right. Yes, this is, seeing kind of housing as a human right is really, really significant in moving forward.
Okay, so that, of course, clashes with the fact that housing is an investment for people. And look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm not involved in this, because I own a property in HRM, and I want to maximize someday the value of that when I cash out. So we all have a role in this, I guess is what I'm getting at, right?
Well, and also, we live in a social democracy, right? One of the core values is that government is there to create, alongside community, social safety structures. And I think what we're moving towards a deeper understanding is that housing has to also play a key role in those social safety nets. And that's why we need investments around social and community housing. We need investments around community housing and land trusts, for example. But we also need some mechanisms to maintain some parts of housing outside the core investment market to be able to have some layers and levels of affordability. I think we're starting to see throughout the world that's a key mechanism for creating a quality of life for civil society.
Okay, so when it comes to, I guess, the investment arm of it, outside of individual homeowners, we're talking big property owners, and in some cases, I mean, some of these companies are massive companies. What are your thoughts on that component? Should we categorize investment owners or view them through a different lens? If it's some of the big players, or if there's some of the smaller people who have one or two properties or investment properties, I guess, is it fair to look at the entire industry with one lens is the question.
Right. And I don't think it is fair. I think a much more just lens is that, there's small landlords out there, and then there's much larger corporate style landlords. And I think for what we've seen in the data is that most small landlords are actually playing by the rules and are providing what they can to support tenants, residents. It's primarily the large external styled property management corporations that really are treating all housing as an investment and not seeing that there's human beings that are kind of suffering through that when we hear about rent evictions, when we hear about massive rent hikes. So I think there are different layers that we can different mechanisms that we can put in place through government in order that we provide support for small landlords that are actually having a very difficult time right now in maintaining rents and maintaining their houses, their rental properties, versus the larger kind of corporate styled mechanisms out there.
How about having a more robust kind of Tenancies Act and a properly staffed adjudication process, so that that to me makes the most sense here. I think that you want to talk about investment. To me, that would be a good use of our dollars.
Absolutely. So there's something that just came out today. That a group of tenants have kind of bonded together to kind of explore the letters they got around rent evictions, and supposedly it was based on one particular rationale that never surfaced, and they went to the board. I mean, I think these are the ways that we can provide some form of support for populations that are more and more really disempowered in this whole housing industry.
Okay, so why do you think that governments are generally not getting it done here? What's going on here? Why are these policies? To me, it would seem to make sense, but what's the hesitation? I suppose is the question.
I mean, I think there's a couple layers. One is, I mean, housing is really, really complicated. There's huge layers of bylaws and policy structures at the municipal, provincial, federal level. So it is quite a massive undertaking to begin with. And I think in lots of ways, our province has really kind of stepped out of framing housing in any type of kind of human right lens to allow for a kind of even playing field between landlords and also renters. So I think more and more kind of pressure on the province will be instrumental in getting them around the table to rethink some of their policies around rent control, some of their policies around rental board adjudication processes. And secondly, we, as a province, we have really, really stepped away from any support and funding around affordability for a long, long time. So now, of course, we hear it in the news and in discourse every day. We're talking about a housing crisis, but really, there's been very little investment up to probably the last 10, 15 years. So we really kind of need to also keep government engaged and invested in social and affordable housing. It is being built. It's slow, and it's not at the same level as, for-profit housing that is, like you said at the beginning, really outside the means of most people these days. So I think we really have to keep pressure on the province to really be at the table.
Yeah, and of course there's the competition for labor and contractors, and because
Absolutely.
in the end they have to do these are the people that are going to do the work, the contractors and the skilled trades, and this is another challenge, right? Is the labor portion of all of this.
Right. So it's a very complicated kind of avenue. So yeah, you're absolutely right that the new evidence has come out that the construction industry is heavily overwhelmed right now, and also there's also dealing with their own kind of mental health kind of constraints these days as well, but they're just so overwhelmed in the labor that they're doing. So I think there's got to be, and that's got to be government again that is around the table, being able to allow for an industry to prosper, but also an industry that sees its role in many different facets of civil society. The construction industry is huge in the affordability world these days.
Is there any reason for optimism here?
Yeah, I think about that because we've chatted about it often. I think there is. I think when you look around, you see the new nonprofit affordability builds. It's extremely optimistic, and it's hopeful that that organizations, mostly nonprofits, are really kind of on the ground building these units for folks, and we've seen them open, from lots of different kind of avenues across the province. So there is hope. The fact is, there's so many other entangled pieces to this, right? Like high inflation, cost of living, food insecurity. All those elements are also putting a lot of pressure. And we are seeing more people in encampments now. We are seeing more people at shelters. So I think this is a very rough time, but there is hope in the sense that there are new discussions, new ways of service delivery, new styles of supportive housing that are are being constructed or have been constructed that people now feel much safer in. So, for example, I was with a colleague a few days ago that runs a particular nonprofit, and they've moved people out of hotels, families out of hotels into their own units. So there's something beautiful about that.
What about encampments? Do you think that look, it's something that is far from ideal? I get that, but what needs to happen in order to reduce encampments and the need for encampments?
Yeah, I think we have to have a better sense of who's in the encampments and where they could go if we're going to be moving away from kind of allowing encampments to surface. A lot of folks in the encampments, high acuity, need particular styles of supportive housing, particular wraparound case management. That we have an industry, we have a homelessness sector that is extremely strained and overwhelmed. So, yeah, there is. I think we really need to think through where people can go that is going to be the best option for them. And even outlet housing, tiny home constructions are such a better avenue than allowing folks to kind of just pitch a tent.
Yeah.
It's just horribly undignified, and I get why. I mean, I'd be pitching a tent too. If the options are what the options are right now.
Yeah, for sure. But the cost of these pallet homes and some of these other options, I think is cause or pause for concern. I think that we need to perhaps figure out a way to get it done in a way that we can afford and is sustainable. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think some of the ways in which the last bunch of pallet houses were constructed and brought over, you question why it could not have been done much cheaper and more local. So I completely agree. I know it's complicated around finding space and land for this, but it is a much cheaper alternative than shelter living. And we're not at that stage where we have really defined, well-constructed supportive housing. It's coming in areas, but a lot of them are, scattered small units, which I think is very, a smart, very appropriate, well-researched style of service provision. We're not building, massive apartment buildings that are going to be just for supportive housing. I think it's mixed environments are very, very important. But for those who need that wraparound core support, pallet houses can be, in my estimate, a really nice interim kind of level right now until we have more builds.
Jeff, always interesting. Appreciate it. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. Jeff Krabbenau, professor at Dalhousie University, co-director of Dal Social Work Community Clinic. We will be right back. All right, this story, Canada likely isn't the main target of U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose a 200% tariff on pharmaceutical imports, an industry representative says recently. But its plan could still put parts of the Canadian sector in peril. Jim Keon, Canadian Generic Pharmaceutical Association president, joins us to discuss this. Jim, thanks for joining the show.
Good afternoon, Todd. Pleased to be here.
Okay, so how might this potentially impact the industry here in Canada?
Well, most directly, if high tariffs, and you're right, the president has talked about tariffs being as high as 200% on pharmaceuticals. If they do go into force, then our companies, and we have a number of companies that export to the United States, they're going to be faced with either paying the tariffs or having their customers pay the tariffs or not exporting. In the United States, I represent generic drugs in Canada, drugs that are sold after patents expire at much lower prices. In Canada and in the United States, generic drugs are already sold at low prices. And that means low margins. The margin between the cost of production and selling is low. That's how you can sell them at competitive prices. If that is a significant tariff, then those products, the prices are either going to go up in the United States or the products won't be sold. And we are very concerned as an industry that our companies that have been successfully selling into the U.S. are going to be shut out of that market if the U.S. imposes very high tariffs.
Might that impact supply in Canada as well?
Well, not directly, but it could. Not directly in the sense that Canada would have to retaliate and put tariffs on U.S. products coming into Canada. We have been very clear with the Canadian government that they should not do that, regardless what the U.S. does. Putting a tariff on pharmaceuticals, on healthcare products, is going to raise the cost of healthcare in Canada. And so we don't think that's a good solution. There must be ways of retaliating or negotiating that avoid that. Where it could have an impact, though, is if the companies that are now selling into the U.S. find that without that U.S. volume, that some of these products they can't continue to make competitively and sustainably from a cost perspective because the volumes are going to go down, then it could mean discontinuances in Canada of certain products, and that could have an impact on the Canadian market. That all depends on when and if and how the tariffs go into effect in the U.S.
Okay, so when it comes to the supply in the United States, the majority of their supply does come from China and India. Is that correct?
Well, it's either domestically made in the U.S. or it's coming. A lot of the starting materials are often called active pharmaceutical ingredients are coming from China and India and from Europe. The Canadian exports to the U.S. are, from a U.S. perspective, relatively small, certainly less than 5%, but they can still be very important to companies exporting to the U.S. So, yeah, Canada, as you said in your intro, we don't believe Canada on pharmaceuticals is the major target. But if broad-based tariffs are put into effect, it could impact Canada as well. What makes this more complicated, of course, is that President Trump is talking about tariffs on pharmaceuticals, but at the same time, you have Canada negotiating an economic and security agreement with the United States. And the Prime Minister has said most recently he moved the date from wanting an agreement by July 21st to August 1st. If Canada has an agreement with the U.S., will it include something about tariffs? Would it include anything about tariffs on pharmaceuticals, either a lower rate or an exemption for Canada? We don't know. We would like, as an industry, we don't support tariffs. There have been no tariffs on medicines for more than 30 years. That's worldwide. These are rules under the World Trade Organization. Companies have globalized complex supply chains. If you put in tariffs, it's going to cause companies to try and find other ways of getting products made and distributed. It's going to complicate the supply chain, probably add costs to the system. We don't support tariffs at all. However, if there are going to be tariffs in the U.S., we do think that Canada should be seen as a trusted partner. The U.S. has said, well, we need tariffs. We want to bring back manufacturing into the United States. We're concerned from a health security perspective that an over-reliance on products coming from China and India and elsewhere leaves us vulnerable. If we get into a trade war or worse, are they going to cut back or threaten not to supply us with products? So we want our own manufacturing. Tariffs are a way to do that, according to the president. We don't think that's right. We think that an open system encouraging efficiencies is the best way to ensure supply. However, if there are going to be tariffs, we do think Canada should be seen as a trusted partner, trusted ally. We're landlocked with the U.S. We have democracy like the U.S. They're going to impose tariffs. They should not impose them on Canadian product. Canadian products are high quality. We have a strong regulator in Health Canada. They're well priced, and the U.S. would be well advised to continue to allow those products from Canada into the U.S. without tariffs.
Okay, Jim, appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
Okay, well, I'm glad to talk to you, Todd.
All right,
Thank
take care. You got a Jim Key on, Canadian Generic Pharmaceutical Association President. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We had lots of good conversation today, and we'll do that again tomorrow. I'd like to thank Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass of the control board, doing a fine job as always. As mentioned, we're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.